Hey everybody, this is my 40-gallon Waterfall tank, and I do want to shoot a little update on what's going on with my plants. Chiefly, I want to point out that my daylilies have some significant flower spikes on them already. You can see those two right there sticking way up, and I've got a few more smaller ones down there that are working their way out. So we should get a minimum of at least 4 flower spikes that I can see already. I'm sorry, make that 5 flower spikes that I can see already. And I don't know if we're going to get any more than that, but we should get at least 5 flower spikes coming up off of that. And my Ludwigia is also doing really well. Some of the sweet woodruff that I planted over here, some of the water sprite that I've planted over here is doing really well. And of course down in the in the tank rather, I've got the Ludwigia you can see that is directly below the waterfall itself. And then in the front, I've got some Java Windelov, which does not grow vigorous or fast, but it is a plant, it is in there, and it is growing, so it is absorbing nutrients out of the tank, which is what this video is ultimately going to be about. And then you can see that sort of scraggly little temple plant that I've got in there that I'm hoping is going to start growing and generating new growth on it pretty soon. So far, it does not look like it's doing real well, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. So, the other day I was topping off my tank, and I always top this tank off with my groundwater. I don't take it out of my tap, I take it right out of my well. I've got a bypass valve with a hose on it, and it's easy to just fill up a bucket and bring it in here and fill the tank up. So that's what I use as my top-off water, rather than water that's gone through my, I'll call it a softening system, although it doesn't really soften. I guess technically it does. I have really soft water that starts out, but it's also acidic. So what it does is it goes into my water system, it gets hardened, it gets calcium and magnesium added to it, and that brings the pH up a little above neutral, about 7.3. And then once the pH is stabilized, it does go through a softener, and it takes that calcium and that magnesium back out of the water and exchanges those ions for sodium ions, and therefore I've got a stable pH at 7.3, but I have 0 degrees hardness in my water, and that's why I don't have really acidic water. So you can think about my water system as being more of a neutralizer than a softener. But in the process of neutralizing the water, it does first harden the water, and then it resoftens it back to 0 degrees hardness. I've also got an ion exchange medium in there that will take nitrates out of the water. And water that comes out of my tap is right around 5 parts per million right now. And that's about what I've got going on in the tank. This is water that I just took out of the tank and tested a few minutes ago. I haven't topped the tank off in about 3 or 4 days. I do lose a fair amount of water to evaporation. I usually keep the water level right to the tippy top of the rim. So I lose that much in maybe 3 or 4 days or something. And so that's what our nitrates look like, about 5 parts per million. Very, very low nitrates. And I've been talking recently about finding a way to add more nitrates to the tank without worrying about adding fertilizer or something like that. I didn't want to do an additive, but I did want to increase the amount of nitrogen available in the tank. And so the other day it occurred to me as I was topping the tank off with my groundwater, instead of checking my nitrates at the tap, what I should be doing is checking my nitrates in my groundwater, because I very well could be adding a significant amount of nitrates to this tank simply by bypassing my water system. So I just checked the nitrates in my groundwater, and that's what we're looking at. So not crazy, but we are getting up towards the upper end of where I might go from that transition from being that sort of orange color to that red color. So we're sitting just in the neighborhood of 30 parts per million, maybe getting up towards 40 parts per million. But you can see the difference between them clearly when you hold them up side by side. The one on the left that's, pale is the tank water, and that is what's coming directly out of my ground. So I'm putting this water in the tank every time I do a top off. So this afternoon will be another top off, and that'll take probably 3 gallons to top it off, maybe 4 gallons to top it off. So I'll be putting 4 gallons of that in there. and within a few days the water will be back to this. Now it will also be interesting, I'm running really low on my nitrate tests, so I don't know if I'm actually going to test for this or not, but it would be interesting to see a before and after with my water topping of the tank off. Start and see if we start with something like this, and then after we add 5 gallons of that, will it make a noticeable difference in the tank? Will I really be adding enough nitrogen, to really make a difference in the plants? Now, I'm obviously adding, 30 parts per million nitrates, and it's bringing it down to this. So it is using them up. I am reducing nitrates, I am scrubbing nitrates out of my water. My groundwater goes in with higher nitrates than it comes out in this tank. So that's pretty good, I think. And as long as I've got good vigorous growth, I'm not going to worry too much about adding any kind of supplements or anything like that. My Ludwigia is doing well. The water sprite, the biggest problem I have with my water sprite is I just put too much light on it and I'm crushing it that way. Water sprite's a fairly low light plant, but I'm overdoing it. So we'll have to see how that works. But as long as everything's still doing well and as long as I've still got this lush growth, I'm not going to worry too much about it. Anyway, just found that interesting. I thought I would go ahead and shoot some video of it. And don't forget, of course, all of these plants you can see around it. These are actually some tiger lilies. These are going to get, these will be way up here in the bright light here not too long from now. And they'll start probably by June. We'll start to see some flowers developing on them. So that ought to be interesting. I've never tried to do tiger lilies in the house, especially in the periphery of this LED up here. It's a really powerful LED. And if I was hanging it directly above, these I'm calling them daylilies, these tiger lilies, if I hang it 18 inches or 2 feet above it, shining straight down on it, those things would be growing like crazy. But they're 3.5, 4 feet away from it, and they're way over on the periphery. So we'll have to wait and see how they turn out. They are a pretty high light requirement plant, and we'll have to wait and see how well they do in the long run. And then, of course, over here I've got all of my Rex begonias and my geraniums, and they too get watered from a watering can. They're not actually drawing any kind of nutrients out of the tank. It's all from a watering can. So once again, the stuff we see in here and then all of this stuff is what's actually drawing the nutrients out of the tank, and it is doing it. We do have less nutrients after it's been in the tank for a little while than it was when we put it in there. So thanks for watching, everybody. I know that was a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to give everybody a nice good long look at the tank while I chatted about it. So that is going to be my update on the Waterfall tank for today. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you real soon on the next one.